Good morning and thank you very much for joining us. I am Yori Folari. Hope we meet you well. Academic Staff Union of Universities strike is still very much on, and federal government seems to be pursuing all the legal angles possible. It, has, applied to the National Industrial Court sitting in Abuja to, challenge the strike and for the court to ask ASUU to indeed go back to work while matters continue where efforts continue to sort out matters. We'll see how that goes. It was scheduled for mention yesterday, and by now it has been postponed further. So let's look at this particular, shall we say, side road to this long-standing disagreement. My guest this morning, friend of the house, Jide Ologun, is a lawyer and public affairs analyst with me here in our Lagos studio. Thank you very much, Jide, for coming on.
You're welcome, sir.
Appreciate you. We'll also be joined by a lawyer and communications expert, senior lawyer Dr. Fasi Yusuf will also be joining us remotely later on. So, but to start off, the ASUU seems adamant. It's explained that it's tired of compromises that haven't led us anywhere. And so it seems that ASUU wants to pursue this to a logical conclusion. Now, the government has always said, look, can you go back to work while we talk? And ASUU has always been, foul. We're not going back to work, answer us. Now, government has gone this way. Do you see it as government pursuing all the legal actions possible? Because the statement that government, first of all, made was that, look, we are bound by the law here. But no work, no pay. It's not us. We just cannot be seen to be an administration breaking the law. Give me your thoughts.
Fantastic position there. The no work, no pay concept is a global one. But there are deeper issues here. We're talking about issues of performance. ASUU is saying also that there are resolutions prompted by negotiation and agreement.
Going back
that
to
you
2009.
Also fulfill your own part. And ASUU said, after much is said and done, more is said than done. So we are at the point of testing the trust capital of the government, because the most recent is that the government now offered, we are going to increase your salaries as lecturers. Then we release 150 billion naira in the 2023 budget, a budget that is already a deficit budget, that about 6.3 or thereabout we go into fuel subsidy that we are still apprehensive about. So how will that promise be fulfilled? And ASUU is claiming, we are not just talking about salaries and end allowances. We are talking about interventions in the infrastructural capacity of our academic institutions to bring it at par with what you have at international level, to even attract foreign students, attract foreign lecturers, and be able to give meaningful education to the beneficiary. So it's not, and these are issues that are sacrosanct, and I think they are strategic in nature going ahead, if indeed this nation has a plan to become developed, because you cannot rule out the place of education. When you look at the prosperous countries of the world, you will see the premium price that is placed on education. And here we are now, we need to consider about three key areas: the legal area, the HR area, and the public relations area. And I must acknowledge and commend the fact that I'll be sharing this discussion with my elder in public relations, Dr. Fasi Yusuf, and also in the legal profession. So here we are now, and in HR, there is room for collective bargaining. And when you go for collective bargaining, you come to terms and conditions that you agree upon and you are expected to implement. And look at it now, since February 14, 2022, ASUU has been on strike, and you can look at the impact, not just on the students, the parents, the brand image of Nigeria, and the brain drain aspect of it. Many lecturers have left the shores of this nation. I was reading a report about 500 medical practitioners left this country within a year or so. About 7,256 nurses left for the UK within 2 years or thereabout. You see, so what exactly is the picture of a future we have for this nation?
Now, be all of that as it is, you'll recall that the federal government in this action before the National Industrial Court sitting in Abuja has also asked it to inquire into the, I'm quoting directly now, inquire into the legality or otherwise of the strike, even after apprehension by the Minister of Labor and Employment. So they want to look at it holistically, and also they are requesting that the court should please decide if these professionals concerned can rightly expect pay for work not done, which you know is a very sore point with.
you need to qualify why the work is not done. You see, and that is a big task for the court. And I have a deep trust in the national.
They started from the legality of the strike once straight, and then secondarily whether or not work can or should be paid for.
There is no law that forbids strike, except in some specialized sectors of the national life, like the military and police and such. But here, if you are dissatisfied, you express your grievances. We are talking about trade dispute here. We are talking about labor matters here. You express your grievances. If they are attended to, you are happy, you proceed. If they are not attended to, you go into negotiation. There are dispute resolutions procedures. You go into arbitration, and it appears that all these have broken down. ASUU is even claiming that when the government representatives come to them to discuss with them and they agree on terms, sometimes they never even come back with a feedback. So you find a situation of David and Goliath here now. And the ASUU is saying, we don't just want a palliative approach. Now, even if the court, and I'm not preempting the court, decide that ASUU should resume back to school, what about if they resume and they are not giving the quality service that should be given?
I hear you. Now,
what about if they even disobey that the order of the courts? I'm just trying to imagine. So are we really looking at the main issue here, the fundamental issue, which is the fact that we need to revive our educational system in Nigeria and upscale it to provide decent, meaningful, and productive services towards a secured future?
But as you know, I don't know to the extent to which it matters. The public is almost, they almost have fatigue. When we talked about this last week, there were people phoning in, inquiring into whether there were alternative methodologies that ASUU could deploy rather than the strike. You know, that would have been in frustration. The way you smiled is the way the president, the chair of UNILAG chapter of ASUU also smiled when that call came in. But the point I wanted to make is that it's been going on for so long that, you know, people, you would think that people in the public that should come about it seem to be in two minds now. But hold your comments, please, because we can now be joined by Dr. Fassi Yusuf, lawyer and public affairs analyst. Morning to you, Fassi.
Good morning, Yori. How are you doing there?
Very good. Thank you very much. Can you, well, the government has said that now the National Industrial Court should, you know, look at the entirety of the strike with a view to determining its legality. So it seems that the federal government is pursuing the legal option along the lines it had earlier said that wasn't very pleasing to ASUU, which is that it cannot be seen to be paying for work that hasn't been done because it wants to be a law-abiding administration.
Let me say from the onset that education in Nigeria is in a state of paralysis, and that it's a reflection of the general situation in the country. I'm not going to go into what is in court because it will be sub judice, and as a lawyer, I should not be seen to be commenting on what is in court. As we can look at the general framework of what is happening, look at what both sides are doing. You've asked the question whether the government was right in going to court. My humble opinion is that the government is being mischievous because just last week, the government set up a 9-man panel to review all what has been happening in the last 9 months, because what is happening now not just happened 6 or 7 months ago when they declared the trade dispute or the strike. But before then, so many things led to what happened now. But for government now to go to court at this stage, to me, sort of some mischief. And I think we as Nigerians, we need to try to see how we can cure the mischief the government is trying to create. The issues at stake are very fundamental, and I think it goes beyond what the court can easily resolve. We are compounding the problems by going to court. I mean, ordinarily, we should have expected government to wait for the outcome of the committee it voluntarily set up in tandem with what ASUU has laid before will be laying before the committee. But for the government to decide that, look, let's approach the industrial court. Are they going to abandon the committee set up to resolve the issues or what? I think the problem I have resolving, analyzing issues in this country is that when you are trying to provide solutions to certain aspects, more fundamental, more germane issues will rear their ugly eyes. And then you are left more confused. Because all sides have taken, I've got their lawyers, and normally they pontificate. They make their own submissions and others. At the end of the day, the court will decide either way. Don't forget that court is not the court of final determination in this country. You have the Court of Appeal, you have the Supreme Court. Assuming, but without agreeing to that okay, the National Industrial Court is able to arbitrate or is able to decide one way or the other. If one party is not in support of that decision, that party can go to the appellate court, in which case the Court of Appeal. And from the Court of Appeal, you can also go to the Supreme Court. So for how long are we going to spend? And don't forget that this can take up to 2, 3, 5 years to resolve. So I think alternative dispute resolution mechanisms should be further deployed, and the government should not create any mischief by going to court. And going to court, as I said, will compound problems. And you had a lawyer speaking yesterday. Although I will not support lawyers commenting on issues before the court. But then they spoke, or the three parties spoke yesterday through their counsel, and the court will be reconvening on Friday. So from Friday, there'll be another adjournment upon adjournment. And Sarah is saying that, look, they want to join as an interested party.
Indeed.
They want to join as an interested party.
One moment, Fassi. I'm going to come back to you. Fassi, I'm going to come back to you.
Okay.
I'm going to come back to you because as you were mentioning there, SERAP, the Socioeconomic Rights and Accountability Project, through its council, Ebunolu Adegboro SAN, wished to be joined, in the suit because it said it itself, that is SERAP, had recently filed a similar action compelling, with a view, that is, to compelling the federal government to honor the agreement it had entered into with the striking varsity lecturers since 2009. So Fassi was just explaining the complexities, the rigors that we're going to have to go through, this is not going to make it any easier. The setup is saying that, look, good that you people are thinking like that, because we also have an action, and please join us by all means.
But the court has responded that it's too early to consider that joinder move. But it's an expression of interest. And like Dr. Fassi mentioned, there are other approaches to this. Recently, the aviation sector almost grounded the national economy. But the federal government rose up and took care of that. You see, so beyond this going to court, which of course is legitimate, how do you attend to the fundamentals? You know, I just made reference to the 2023 budget that is apprehensive in nature. A minister of state came out to say that the federal government could not go and borrow 1.3 trillion naira to attend to ASUU. But within the confines of governance, the nation could afford to buy exotic SUVs for a foreign nation to provide food for students who were not in school during COVID-19 lockdown. So in a way, you see expenditure that are not channeled to what will enhance national development. And you give excuse that a critical sector of securing the future should be subjected to what it is.
Okay.
Are we
I don't
even
know.
complying
As
with
you
the
know-
recommendations of the United Nations in terms of budgetary allocation to education? So there are fundamental issues that are not being attended to.
Be that as it is, let me take an aspect of what you've just said to Fassi. Because what I mean by that, Fassi, is that, Jide just spoke about what would be required to address this strike that the federal government says it can't afford, and then says that look, for example, at the gift it made of vehicles to one of the neighboring countries. There are those who say, one should compare oranges with oranges and apples with apples, that really those two are different and cannot be lumped together, as it were, in the same sentence. I don't want to spend too much time on it because it's a different subject, but what is your opinion on Jide's commentary there, that you say you can't deal with ASUU, yet you are busy giving vehicles to, is it a fair comment? Because Jide is not the only person making that comment, as you well know. It's pretty much out there. Is it a knowledgeable comment?
It all depends on the perspective you are looking at it. In international diplomacy, so many issues come to play. You talk about security, you talk about economic rapprochement, you talk about the cost-benefit analysis, and all the rest. I'm not the Minister of Foreign Affairs, neither am I the National Security Advisor. But I think government in its wisdom might have weighed the various options that should we assist our neighbor, especially when we have security issues in the country and the terrorists are penetrating the country through these places. What do we do to make them reason with us or to assist us in combating terrorism in the country and so many other things? But I think lack of communication or effective communication,
Perhaps.
Communication must have been responsible for the perceived misadventure or misplaced priority of government. I put that in parentheses because if you call it a misadventure or misplaced priority, some other pundits or some other analysts will tell you that, well, because of security implication or because of economic situation, or because we are surrounded by all these francophone countries and they have a role to play in the security architecture of this country.
Sure.
Then therefore, we should assist them.
Okay.
Let's go beyond that. What? Okay. You want to pass the why?
I was going to say, therefore, to Jide, that the jury's still out, really, on that one, as fast as explained. Depends on who is analyzing the matter. And you probably can
Yes,
can
I quite
understand
agree
it.
with that. But you see, my position is that if your house roof is
on fire.
leaking terribly.
Or leaking, yeah.
It may not be the time to paint that house. The wise thing for you to do at that point is to replace that roof.
Okay.
Then you think of painting the house later. You see, when you look at it holistically, it appears that education is not earning the deserved attention.
Which is ASUU's position.
Not just ASUU's
know,
position. It's a national position. It's obvious. And another school of thought, and I give credence to the concept of perception that my elder brought on the table. You see, some are imagining that may it be that the war Boko Haram started to fight education is now escalated to the point where education is facing a national, massive threat. In the sense that, for those of us who research, you don't want me to roll out the number of schools that have been shut, not just in the northern part of the country, in other parts of the country. You don't want to imagine the number of young ones who are now saying they don't even need education to succeed in life.
Because of what they observe in society.
Exactly. So you can see the frustration and everything. And in the hospital, you have emergency ward that you must quickly attend to patients that are brought in there. Is the case of education in Nigeria an emergency? On the other side of weighing expenditure priorities, those in government, are they not paid? How much are they paid? I was reading a report that even a councillor at local government level may be earning more than a lecturer at the high rate. And again, I have also researched that many of these lecturers that have been trained in Nigeria that should give value to the country have been taken away into other countries.
Okay, yes, you made that point earlier.
So for how long do we deal with brain drain?
Okay, Fassi, and Jide knows it as well as any lawyer worth his salt, or her salt for that matter. No lawyer is going to comment freely and directly on any matter that is in court at the moment. But the court is going to have to come to its finding based on the evidence besides it, right? Because all these things we're talking about, the courts, are also aware of the society in which they exist and how these things are. So what is the technical process? This application that has been made by the federal government, what's the technical process for them to arrive at a decision following the deliberations? Because we often hear that the courts cannot go beyond the evidence. We've also heard the court is not Father Christmas. So put it in context for us.
Yes, the parties involved will have to join issues with each other. Once issues are joined, they are distilled, and the court will now be invited to decide one way or the other. And it all depends on the submissions made by parties and how strong their submissions are and how convincing they are to the judge who will be adjudicating on the matter. But as I said, it is not the route to take. As Americans will say, it's not the route to take, because constructive engagement will be more appealing and will be more sensible.
Okay.
Going to court at this stage was prolonging the already escalated situation of education in this country.
Okay.
We have to decide for ourselves, what type of education do we want? Do we want a situation where things will be as they were, or we want to be in the league or in the committee of developed nations who have been able to make the best use of education, like China, like Japan? Let's not even talk about America now, because even education in America and Britain is something else now.
Okay.
Let's look at countries like India, like China, like Japan, that are making the best use of education. And the concept of education in this country should also be looked at holistically, because everybody wants university education. But are really getting the best out of our university education?
Okay. Okay.
Those people, I mean, those of us who are involved, I mean, I teach in the university, for example. We cannot really put those people in the, those students, in fact, 80% of them have no business being in the university. Because the foundation is faulty, because the perception of students is just to acquire certificate for the sake of it, not for national development, not for technological development.
So you're touching on the quality of university education today because of all these things. That's what you're speaking to right there.
Not just the quality. I'm talking about the students themselves who are in the university. Do they ought to be there? How many of them ought to be there?
Oh, okay. One moment, please. One second. I hear you. One second, Fasi. Jide, Fasi, they are, opining that constructive engagement is the way to go rather than the route of the route of litigation. What do you think of that concept? Because clearly, government, is also open to that option, but has gone the litigation route instead.
Absolutely. You will still come back to resolutions. Even if the court decides that, okay, go and pay ASUU, you still have to pay. You look for the money to pay. If the court decides that ASUU go back to work, ASUU is going to ask, on what basis? Are you now saying we have the facilities that can compete with what is available in other countries, like Dr. Fasi mentioned? You see, so these are issues. Let's deal with fundamental. Let me bring a palliative experience in this country that is disturbing. We have moribund refineries, and we claim to have spent about 100 billion naira to turn them around. And today we are talking about oil theft. So could we have decided to build new ones? There are several options.
Yes. Could we have ended Boko Haram ages ago, given the monies that have been,
when you sit down, really,
there's so many of those kind of questions.
For those who don't just give a cursory look. Okay, now, recently, somebody was brought back into the country from Egypt with a strong connection with those who attacked the train. But as we speak now, none of those attackers have been arrested. So when you read these stories, you cannot, sensibly put them together to come to the conclusion there is effective engagement of resources. So, and that is where we are now. So there are issues, basically the payment system for the lecturers, reviving the facilities in the institutions to bring it up to par.